All right, welcome back to the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast. This week, we're going to be diving into multiple different studies. Everyone, me, Joe, and Dave, we brought a different study today. So I'm going to be talking about how to increase your VO2 max with a kettlebell. Very interesting study. Joe's going to be talking about nitrates, and Dave has some information on strength and running. Very interested. We have not seen each other's studies ahead of time. We want to be just as surprised as you are, but we each brought a different scientific study that we think can help the Garage Gym Athlete. But I do have a quick update on isometric. So if you listened to last week's episode, I said I was going to do a training session on isometric training, or do isometric training session and update everyone about it. And all I can tell you right now is that I am incredibly sore. My back is super sore. So I did not do a pure isometrics only session. So I didn't, we talked about that, Dave and I, in last week's podcast of like only doing isometrics. But I did a lot of isometrics, but I did it in the way that I mentioned on the podcast where I would kind of pre-exhaust the muscle. So like doing reps and then end with an isometric hold or something like that. So if you think about, one of the exercises I did was I had 2 dumbbells and I would press overhead for like 10 to 15 reps. And then I would hold it overhead for like 30 seconds. And the reason I did it this way is because, Dave, the more you and I talked about it, the isometrics they performed in the study were incredibly brutal. It's like pressing against an object. It's pressing against an immovable object, right? And that's kind of different than like holding the bottom of a push-up position, but it's not, in my opinion, if you're incredibly fatigued. It's about the same if your muscles are closer to failure. And for me, it's always about, it's not exactly how you do something. It's the stimulus, it's the idea, the concept behind it. So for me, in my opinion, and this is just my take on it, was if I could pre-fatigue the muscle as much as possible, then hold that position, it's going to feel like I'm working against an immovable object, right? Because I didn't want to do locked pins at the bottom and try and deadlift, my rack and end up flipping it over or something like that. And to be honest, I was thinking more about this. I was like, couldn't you just load barbells with weights you can't lift and try to lift it for like 30 seconds and call it really good isometric training, right? Like it's like, let's load the barbell with 700 pounds. I can't deadlift it. I'll try and pull it off the ground for 30 seconds and call it a training session. I guess you could, but I don't know if that's solid. That's like maximum effort. So I feel like there has to be an in-between here. So anyway, I did a bunch of stuff with pressing overhead, like I mentioned, with the dumbbells. I did planks. I did pull-ups like we talked about. I did push-ups like we talked about. So I do a bunch of pull-ups, and then I would hold basically the top of the pull-up position or about midway. I didn't go full chin over bar because I wanted a little bit longer, muscle length there. According to last week's study, I did the push-ups. So anyway, what ended up sore the most on me was my back for some reason. I don't know if it was the pull-ups, but anyway, seems like again, we mentioned this last week. I don't know if being sore is the most effective measure of how a workout program is, but as someone who trains regularly and I don't get all that sore, being pretty sore right now as of recording this because of that training session, I don't know. It was brutal. It was hard. I didn't want to do it. It was annoying, which means it's all probably really good training in my opinion. So there's the update on isometrics for the Garage Gym Athlete. If you want to add it, it's pretty easy to add to any training session. Just it's like a burnout method,
Was the isometrics the only thing you did differently? Like did you do different movements to pre-fatigue? Because did that cause a soreness, or was like the isometrics, these were movements you were doing before and you
because I've been doing a ton of, we've been talking about strike zero, everything else. I've been doing a ton of push-ups and pull-ups and all that kind of stuff. So nothing was really new. The only thing that was new is I haven't been doing a ton of like dumbbell pressing overhead, but my shoulders aren't really sore from that. So yeah, I haven't been getting sore from doing tons of pull-ups. And so I did the same amount of pull-ups, and because my pull-ups in the Strike Zero program are going to failure anyway. So now it's going to failure and then trying to hold it for whatever, 15 to 20 extra seconds, which is really brutal. That's like really hard to do when you're already like at the end of your rope. So it makes for some really hard training sessions. And we kind of talked about it last week, like the central nervous system stimulation here, like it's pretty high. Like I think realistically, one of those per week, that's not something I want to do, and one a week might even be a lot. Like that's not something I want to do a couple times a week. It's really brutal.
Yeah, when you mentioned last week, I think you said two times a week.
Yeah, I was like, we just do this 3 times a week. Like,
no way.
That's not happening. Okay, well, let's get into the studies. Dave, let's kick it off with you, man. Strength and running. I don't know what study you picked or anything about it, but I love the title and think it could help Garage Gym Athletes just from hearing that, just knowing that much. So anyway, I'm very interested to jump into this one. So why don't you break it down for us?
Yeah, so the study I picked, title of it is called Strength Training Improves Running Economy, Durability, and Fatigued High-Intensity Performance in Well-Trained Male Runners, a randomized controlled trial by Zanini et al. It's a 2025 study. So they took 38 well-trained men, and these are people that were only doing endurance stuff. So their average running distance was, I think it was over 20 kilometers per week. They had a VO2 max of 58. So these are well-conditioned people.
Yeah.
They had run a 10K under 5 minutes within the last 6 months. They ran for 90 minutes continuously at least 3 times in the past 3 months. So people, it didn't say if they were training for specific races, but people who have a heavy endurance background, and these people that they weren't following strength training programs. But it was cool because when I look back at some of the other studies that were cited and compared, a lot of the other ones were how strength affected running when people were fresh, and this one took them to pretty high level of fatigue. So they tested running economy. They tested they did a 90-minute run at 80% of VO2. So that was their initial thing. And then they did a time to exhaustion. How far can you go on a treadmill at 95% of your VO2 immediately following the 90-minute run? So they did this 90-minute run. Yeah, sounds extremely fun. Probably why I'm surprised they got 38 guys for it. But so a very high fatiguing thing. And then so that was their initial test. They put them into 2 groups. One just said, hey, keep following your endurance training program. And the second one, they did a plyometric and lower body strength training program. So and the program I thought, was solid considering the amount of miles they were doing. They did stuff like, a lot of plyometric stuff that we work into our programming: pogo jumps, drop jumps, hop and stick, stiff leg bounds for length. So some things that I think is left out of a lot of running programs where people think oh, I'm running, that's kind of my plyometric explosive work. And then they also had them do really just a 3 exercise strength training program that they did. They did the same program twice a week. They did back squat, unilateral leg press, and then isometric calf raise. But what I liked about it was they did in the back squat and leg press, it was progressive overload over the course of 3 weeks. Then they would retest 1 rep max and recalculate all that. But they had them building up to 85 to 90% of 1RM for 3 to 4 sets of 4 to 5 reps. So not just a lot of these running programs we see, it's, they're doing do some walking lunges or some step ups or something. They were loading a barbell heavy for them. So for the results of it, the endurance training didn't see any change in their pre-testing, which isn't a huge surprise. The strength and power increased in the resistance training group, which is pretty obvious. But the cool thing was the running economy they tested, time to exhaustion, and run distance all improved significantly in the run training group compared to the ones that did endurance training only. And what I thought was really interesting, the time to exhaustion improved 31% in the resistance training group, and actually got 13% worse in the endurance only. So the strength training made them maybe more mentally resilient too, to be ready for that. But had a significant change there, which the cool thing is, not that a lot of our athletes are necessarily training for half marathon type distance, but some people are interested in pushing a longer event, a Spartan event, or you want to do a race. It just really stresses the importance of lifting heavy during this and how much that affects. They weren't totally sure of what led to the changes. They noted that blood lactate levels were higher. Maybe they responded better to the higher blood lactate levels. The running stride probably playing a big role in that. That's something that I saw firsthand doing the 100 miler, was how many people's body was just breaking down from not being able to handle that kind of mileage, where even me without a big running background, I believe handled the stresses a lot better, probably with just strength training background. But just a cool thing to remind people of the importance of lifting heavy. That was the coolest thing with the study that I thought was that they weren't doing really light submax work like a lot of people do, where it's only single leg work and do high repetitions, which is common, I think, sometimes in the running training space, but actually loading the barbell up heavy and progressively overloading like a good program should follow. So even if people are training for a longer event, making sure that not neglecting the heavy strength work. But yeah, so that's kind of the overview of that. I'm curious for you guys. I know that the strength results probably aren't too surprising. Obviously they got stronger, the ones that did the strength training group. But are you guys surprised at that distance and intensity, that those results were as good on the endurance side of things?
I think I think was it 31% time to exhaustion? I think you got a good point there with like mental resilience or mental toughness there. But I think what I find really cool about the study is what you mentioned is like going up to 85% of their one rep max, going really heavy. Because most of the running strength training I see is what you're talking about. Is like I'm gonna do some lunges after I run 14 miles. And it's like, yeah, okay, like let's get some real strength training in there. And how I've had to explain this to runners in the past when I'm trying to convince them of running is like a good runner or like a person with a good running program, they understand that they need to hit all these different modalities and these different intensities, right? They're like, I've got a threshold day and I've got a low intensity zone 2 day and all interval day, all these things. And it's like you have to do the same with strength training. And once you can kind of wrap their head around, and contextualize it for them, be like, okay, well, your threshold day in running is your 85% max lifting or, greater in strength training. You need to be doing that. And yeah, you still need to be doing probably some 5 sets of 10, like low max stuff or, sub max stuff, I mean. And, once they can contextualize that, they start to understand strength training and how it can improve running. But I'm always impressed by how much it helps. And sometimes I'm wondering if it's due to the lack of strength to begin with. You know how there's like that honeymoon phase when you're doing anything new in training. So, that's something I find pretty interesting on that one as well. It's like that's quite a big increase for people who are already fairly well trained.
That test that they did sounds like the conditioning or endurance version of your ISO strength, to where they're basically fatiguing themselves and then dying at the end.
Yeah, do something hard, now do more hard.
Yeah. So, Jerred, on your next test, go for a zone 2 run and then just like max 5 minute sprint at the end of your run.
I've done stuff like that before. It'll wake you up.
Yeah.
Gets you going. Yeah.
I like they sort of bookended on like the strength continuum that Jerred, you've gone over the categories of it. They basically went full on speed to super heavy strength, which is really interesting, and I think makes total sense because if they're on endurance, then they're running that repetition is their strength endurance, muscle endurance for when they're actually doing their running or conditioning, but they're not going at max effort speed dynamically in speed, or they're not doing super heavy max effort loads and then resting. So I think it makes total sense and would definitely be great advice for all the endurance people out there to stay balanced and easy to incorporate versus just, if you're running 3 times a week, maybe don't do more endurance with your muscles, maybe hit the opposite ends of the spectrum so that you're more balanced. I always like seeing the running economy go up. That's always nice because that's like, we've done a lot of studies where you get bang for your buck in that, like when they did like was it 1 minute full out sprints, raise running economy, stuff like that. So that's always great because it's bang for your buck for your training, especially adding in a bounding plyometric day, or just like, hey, if you want to have some fun, just go lift really heavy one day just to change it up safely but heavy. So I think that's really cool and easy to apply for any sort of, and especially endurance athletes.
When people that are training for a specific race, their fear is always like, I'm going to be sore. It's going to take away from my run and that, or I'm going to add mass. And really the way that people train, if they're in that higher volume range, is the danger of adding mass is more if you're doing that higher volume stuff versus like if you're doing 3 sets of 3 on a squat at 90% of your 1 rep max, if you can handle the load safely. And like I said, if you're at least proficient in the squat, like you're not going to risk adding any kind of, you're probably not going to add any mass if you're running that kind of mileage. You're gonna add strength. It's going to
Right.
significantly help as long as it doesn't take away from your runs, which comes down to just programming it smartly within the course of the week. It's like it's all very doable to do with a very low cost, because that's the concern for people is like, well, I'm going to get sore. It's going to take away from my runs, or I'm going to add too much weight, and like most of those things are not actually true.
Yeah, I get frustrated with anyone who thinks that they're gonna magically gain mass because my frustration comes from a hard gainer in high school who had to eat thousands and thousands of calories to gain like 1 pound of muscle. And I know not everybody's that way, but I'm like, look, it's not going to happen on accident. And I talk to females about that more than I am runners. Right? They're like, I don't want to get bulky or whatever. It's like, it's not going to happen. You don't need to worry about that. Study, Dave. Thanks for bringing it to the table. I think great takeaways for Garage Gym Athlete. Joe, let's hear a little bit more about nitrates. I'm fairly familiar. We've covered these a number of times. What have you found that can help the athletes?
Yeah, so we've come back to nitrates and beets several times. I feel like most times it's been in the endurance realm, or it's in like when I think of the past ones that we do, I'm thinking of it in like a cardio aspect, longer endurance stuff. But this one was done in 2025, and the name of the study is Effects of Dietary Nitrate Supplementation on Isometric Performance and Physiological Responses in College Bodybuilders, randomized, double-blind, crossover study. And what piqued my interest was that it was specifically on isometric strength endurance or isometric endurance. So, hey, Jerred, here you go. This is a way to help your
perfect.
ISO stuff. Yeah. And so they had 16 male bodybuilders, and they measured heart rate, RPE, blood lactate, electromyography, and they did maximal voluntary isometric contraction test for like max peak iso strength. And then they did 3 rounds of iso circuit and endurance test for testing their isometric endurance. And then now these were bodybuilders, like actual show ones, the ones that like hold their poses, and that was sort of the basis of it. The bodybuilders that are up on stage and posing, holding that flex position, and they kind of wanted to find a way for them to see if nitrates would help hold their positions longer. But to me, it's still an ISO hold, and we do ISO hold. So if you can improve your ISO, then that's all that matters. And so they found that with the study, the peak torque and peak strength for muscle endurance did not go up, but the the endurance to hold went up by 25% in the testing group. So you can holding their poses, their ISO on the 3-round test. On the third one, they held it 25% longer They tested 4 different ones: elbow flexor, forearm muscles, knee extensors, and something with the core. So nitrates, Beets, that's what you get from Beets, will help holding ISO poses or ISO lifts 25% more. And the dosage was not too much. They did do blood lactate tested. I didn't see what they were testing it for that. I think maybe they were just looking. I'm not sure. I couldn't find what they actually tested or what reason they took it from. They just said that they tested it and what they used to test it with. But the dosage was, they recommended 750 to 800 milligrams of nitrate for this. And I actually have some pre-workout like Beet supplement, and mine was like 1,000 milligrams. So like a lot of the supplements will have, and it's about 2 medium-sized beets, like whole beets if you were to eat them. And let's see, I also asked ChatGPT of what it all has. Spinach is about almost a full salad. Same with arugula. Celery, I didn't really know celery had nitrate. It's a lot of celery, but all these things have it.
How much spinach do I need to eat?
It says, let's see, 220 to 300 grams of raw spinach, so full salad bowl.
Okay.
It's about 800 milligrams of nitrate.
We've covered nitrates in a million different ways, and I'm always like, it's like the one thing that I don't need any further proof to consume nitrates or beets, but I just never do it. Well, I don't consume more beets, should I say, but I have a shake almost every day where I put a crap ton of spinach in it. So maybe I'm already getting a lot of the benefits, but I'm going to measure it out, because I don't think I'm putting 200 grams of spinach in my shake. That seems like that would be a bit overwhelming of a shake, but good to know.
Arugula, celery as well. I know people put celery in their shakes and stuff because it's actual moisture instead of just leafy greens.
I love me some beets. Is it like a cumulative thing over the course of the like day or week, or is it like timed around?
I think they did it 1 hour before. They took it 1 hour before. And when I've done it in the past, it's been almost like a pre-workout.
So I love beets, but I'm not eating them an hour before my workout.
I used to do that. So this was like 12 or 13 years ago, Jerry, when you first wrote
Dude, I wrote an article on beets so long ago. Yeah.
And like just me being new and just wanting to try it out, I'm like, all right, I'm going to go to the store and just get this can of beets and just eat it straight out of the can. And I did, and it was fine. But then, not thinking of it, the next time I went to the store, they didn't have them. So I got like pickled beets. Don't do pickled beets, because then you're just like burping up, and it's just like gassy in your stomach.
No. Yeah. I'm going to see. Maybe I'll update the listeners again on how much spinach I'm consuming in my shake, and then you can decide if that's the direction you want to go. Well, I think that's awesome. So we got add more legitimate strength training to your running, not just BS strength training, and you'll see more results. And nitrates, we already know, help so much across every spectrum, endurance, for sure. And now even when it comes to isometric holds. And so that's awesome. I'm going a different direction. I mean, I feel like we're kind of all, these can all help each other, but I'm going to try and sell my study to you guys a little bit more. So do either one of you want to increase your VO2 max by 6%? Without running. No running involved. Increase your VO2 max by 6%. Would you do it?
Tell me more.
Can I do like
Tell me
two?
more. Yeah.
3?
You only want to increase 2%? Well, I think everybody knows VO2 max is incredibly important, and I think it gets a lot of attention right now. I think a lot of people are paying attention to VO2 max, and I try to always simplify VO2 max for people because a lot of people do like to overcomplicate the protocols, and so I always remind people, and I've done episodes on this before, that it's just two things that you need with VO2 max. You need to do things that demand oxygen for a prolonged period of time. And so that could be low intensity running any cardiovascular training, right? You need to have some sort of aerobic training practice. And then you need to also do training that causes an oxygen debt. That's the second part. If you can do those two things, and an oxygen debt is where your breathing can no longer keep up with the activity that you're doing. And the easiest way to think about that is interval training, right? So if I'm going all out for 30 seconds or 60 seconds, I can't sustain that. And after I'm done, I'm going to be breathing really hard to catch up to the oxygen debt that I have created in my body. So if you can just get those two things in your mind, okay, I need to be running, I need to be doing something aerobically. This can be low intensity stuff. And I need to be causing oxygen debt 1, 2, 3 times a week. Boom, you're increasing your VO2 max. But there are specific protocols out there. And the one that I looked at, this is a study done over 10 years ago. So this was in 2015, but I still love the study because I think that it was done really well. And what they looked at, and this is another reason I liked it, is it was female NCAA Division I college soccer players. And the reason I like it so much is because they are so well trained. If you know anything about soccer athletes at this level, endurance is not an issue, right? Like they can go for days. And so I really like that they're testing these high level elite athletes. It doesn't matter to me, male or female in this case. And they are seeing an improvement from the protocol that I'm going to go over here in a second. But I think that it's crazy that they increased their VO2 max by 6% without running. So what's the protocol? Well, they did it with a kettlebell. Okay. And so what they did in this study was they did 4 weeks of training, and they had 2 groups. They had the circuit weight training group. And I thought it was really interesting because I was like, how did they program this circuit weight training? And I pulled it up. So they did 5 exercises that had to be completed in 2 minutes with a 2-minute rest period. And so they did 20 squats, 20 sit-ups, 10 windmills with a kettlebell, and then 10 jump squats, and then they sprinted all out 400 meters. So they did that. They would do all of that within 2 minutes. And from me, a programming standpoint, the windmills was a horrible decision to throw into that. Just from like, if you're trying to train VO2 max, you don't just go ahead and throw in a skilled movement that slows you down a lot. So I think that screwed up the entire study between the 2 groups. In my opinion, that one exercise screwed everything up for them, because that group did 2 minutes on, 2 minutes off, 10 minutes of total work. So 20-minute workout, but only half of it is actual work, right? The other half is rest. And they saw no increase in their VO2 max, which I think is surprising. This is basically a CrossFit workout, right? This is a CrossFit workout minus the windmill, and they saw no improvement in their VO2 max. The other group did something, in my opinion, slightly more brutal. They did 15 seconds on, 15 seconds off of kettlebell snatch for 20 minutes. So that is the protocol. 15 seconds on, 15 seconds off, kettlebell snatch, 20 minutes, 10 minutes worth of work. And what they had to do, the weight selection, because I was really interested in that, they had a bunch of different ways of like, form was very important in this study, which I appreciate, because the kettlebell snatches can be dangerous, can hurt your shoulder, all this stuff. You don't know what you're doing. But they selected around 18% of their body weight, which was the average. So for me, that's going to be around like a 35-pound kettlebell. And they said, or a weight that they could do 7 to 9 reps in that time frame. So there are 2 ways for you to look at that, because the 18% of your body weight might make sense, but if your body weight is really low and you're really well trained, it might not make sense. If you have really high body weight, it might not make sense. So anyway, if you can do 7 to 9 reps in 12 seconds, which is moving, or did I say 12 seconds? Yeah, in 15 seconds, 7 to 9 reps in 15 seconds, that's the weight that you're going to be selecting. And we kind of do this in our 10-11 strength test with the kettlebells. Like we set how many reps you can do, and then you go from there. But anyway, that's pretty much the gist of the study. But they increased, these really well-trained athletes increased their VO2 max by 6%. And all they did was add this to their regular training. So they had all of their normal soccer training, all their regular games, everything was the same between both groups. Everyone was still in the strength and conditioning program for the school. They just added this 20-minute session 3 times per week. And that's what I thought was really cool about it, because I'm always looking for ways to increase VO2 max without just having to go run sprint intervals on a track, right? Or whatever. And so I think this one is pretty good. And at first I was like, I don't want to do snatches like that. But a 35-pound snatch, to be honest, I don't think is that crazy. And if you go back to my overarching principles of like, okay, here's how you increase VO2 max, something that demands oxygen, and also on a different day, something that puts you in an oxygen debt, the more you're moving, total distance of anything, so whether that is a clean and jerk or a snatch, that is going to demand more. Whether you're doing a thruster, a burpee, broad jump, these are all things that include the entire body and are going to create oxygen debt really fast. Because if I want to try and create oxygen debt by doing calf raises, probably never going to happen, right? Like it's just not going to happen because I can't do enough calf raises fast enough for my body to not be able to keep up with that oxygen demand. But when I start moving my entire body with like a burpee or like a broad jump or kettlebell snatch, clean and jerk, anything like that, I'm starting to do reps of them, my body can no longer keep up with the demand of oxygen. And so that's another thing I want to throw in there if you're thinking about adding this protocol to your training. If the kettlebell is too light and you're not breathing hard, there is no magic to 15 seconds on, 15 seconds off. The magic is in creating the oxygen debt. And this one, again, like the isometric last week, I'm going to do this workout this week. I'm going to add it to one of my training sessions, and I don't think it's going to be fun. I think it's going to be pretty crappy. And you got to do it 3 times a week. This isn't like the isometrics, or maybe I could do it once. I got to be doing it 3 times a week. So that is my study. You both agreed to doing it already, basically, when I asked. So you guys have to do it this week too.
So would you say, then you kind of hit on it for the full body movement. So would you say you would need to, it's best to do it like a full body powerful movement, or could you do this on like an Airdyne or something? What would you think about that?
Yeah, see, I think an Airdyne would be great because we know that running, you can increase your VO2 max from running, but yeah, there's going to be a higher oxygen demand and debt if you're doing rowing or Airdyne because you're moving both arms and legs. So I think that you get an even bigger bang for your buck. And this kind of helps in the case of like being able to increase your VO2 max without having to do those single modality things. I mean, this is a single modality, but with a kettlebell, I would probably rather do my VO2 max with a VO2 max training with a kettlebell than running, any day of the week. And then you also have, like, you can do this with jump rope, like I messed around a lot with heavy jump ropes. I have plenty of those. I think I forgot what the big thick one is. I think it's a 2-pound jump rope. Like those will cause an oxygen debt really fast. So I'm not just talking about the CrossFit speed rope, like high bearing, like easy jumping. I'm talking about things that are going to really tax you. And jump rope is another great one I think could significantly increase your VO2 max without having to like go running. But I also think jump rope would probably translate the best to running, just with the bounding nature of jumping and then, how demanding it is on the body from a oxygen demand standpoint.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. I generally enjoy, I wouldn't say I do enjoy running, and I do enjoy intervals. Enjoys used lightly of like they're hard, but I think that's something that just seems most effective for me. But I'd be curious more trying some of these other things because running's also high cost in terms of my overall training week. Like an interval session will beat me up in a different way from a nervous system standpoint, from a hammy standpoint, from a little bit like if I'm trying to do other lifts the next day, it's a high cost movement. So playing around with, a snatch or even like I think kettlebells, like a heavy kettlebell swing. I know I've done in the past when I was training for like Strong First kettlebell certification, ton of swings and snatches and those things too. And the recovery of that seems a lot easier than something like running, where I think there could be a lot of benefit for that.
Yeah, you can do a ton of kettlebell stuff. For some reason, it's not as taxing as something more like barbell or dumbbell stuff. But I mean, having done kettlebell snatches, like we have the kettlebell snatch test in our 1-man-1 kettlebell program. The kettlebell snatch is nasty, especially if you're doing them for time. So I'm going to do this. Anybody else? Can I convince anybody else to do it this week? Dave, you want to give it a shot? Just maybe one time?
I'll do a session. Yeah. I don't know if I'll do 3 of them, but I'll do
I
it.
don't know if I'm going to do 3 either. But RPE, what do you think it's going to be? You think this is a 10?
Yeah, at least a 9. It might be 9 physically, 10 mentally, because that's 40 rounds, right? Of 15 on, 15 off.
Are you thinking 35? Is that you said 35 pounds? Did I hear that right? Like, I'm trying to think of what weight would
18% of my body weight. Or I don't know if we're the same. So I just did the rough math on 18% of my body weight, and it was in the 30s. So, and I have a 35-pound kettlebell. Because if you would have just been like, pick your own weight for this, I would have chosen 50. Yeah. So, but who knows? Maybe I should. But I think I would get 5 minutes into that, and I'd be like, yeah, I think I'm gonna hurt my back. So I think having those parameters was really helpful for me, because also I don't know if I could actually use 50 pounds and hit 7 to 9 reps every single interval. You know what I mean? Like, I think I would end up getting too tired by the end, but I don't actually know. I want to try this one out.
Would you try any other durations of it? Like, because it was 15 on, 15 off, or is it 30 on?
It was 15 on, 15 off. No, I like that because it's short. Like, I do think, like I said, there's not a lot of magic in the protocol. The magic is in the oxygen debt, right? And so I think a 30-30 would work. I think a 60-60 would work. 60-60 starts getting real fast, especially with a snatch. Because we do the 3-minute snatch test, and then, yeah, like I said, that's just terrible. But yeah, I think I want to try it because I want to actually increase my VO2 max, and I don't want to have to do it with running. So I don't know. I'm going to try it once, and then if I'm like, this is something I could add once or twice a week, I might do it just to tilt the VO2 max in a different direction.
If anything, it's just an easy 20-minute workout, or like simple 20-minute workout if you crunch on time.
I like things you don't have to think about when it comes to hard. When it's hard, I don't want to think about like anything else. All right, that's about it. I do want to ask you guys, we'll cover this quickly. We wanted to end out today's podcast talking about supplements because we're starting a new supplement line. No, I'm kidding. We want to see
How many times
what
have you joked about that?
So many times. It's just, I'm trying to plant the seed in people's heads. So when we launch our creatine, everyone's just like, oh yeah, we've seen this coming. I think I said if I ever launch supplements, you need to check and see if I'm okay. So what is a supplement that you guys are like using regularly that you're like, it's really making life easier, training easier? You know, originally I phrased this as you can't live without, but we can all live without a supplement. You know what I mean? So like, what is your favorite supplement right now? And you don't even have to get into brands because that's not the point of this conversation. It's just trying to help, athletes out there understand what we value, and we could probably live without a lot, but ultimately, what is something that, like I said, making your life easier in the supplement world, you really enjoy and utilize maybe on a daily basis, weekly basis, or whatever. Let's start with you, Joe. What do you got?
Well, I picked my study kind of for a reason because of that. Beets, for one, because of the application of it and how easy it is. I like when applying things that are easy, simple enough to do to add in. Like we've talked about with blood flow, getting on the bike versus getting a cold plunge or whatever. So Beets, I've been, like I mentioned, 12 years ago, I ate actual Beets, and then, now they have some supplementation that you can take. I have some powder that I've used some for like a pre-workout in case I need a little extra kick, or depending on what the workout is. And I'd say 1A, 1B would be in the same vein. Tart cherry juice has a lot of
same idea, right?
Yeah, easy application, recovery, performance, sleep, all that stuff. And I just keep a thing of tart cherry juice usually in the fridge, and I can just add it to a drink and apply. It's not going to be like, nothing's going to be earth shattering or like, it's not going to make all the difference in my training, but I think it does help here and there, especially in like an acute way, like that day or two. So that's why I like those, because it's just easy to add, easy to implement and use. Beets, I can usually tell the difference taking them. Maybe there's a little placebo to it, but science says it actually legitimately works from performance standpoint. So those are two that I've been using for at least 10 years on and off, and I will probably continue to still use on and off because there's still more literature that comes out for that it's good.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that's a great one. How about you, Dave? What you got in the supplement arena?
Yeah, supplements, it's a tough question for me because I'm definitely more of a minimalist with it. I mean, creatine's probably the only thing I've taken consistently over the years. I don't I mean, I guess when you say makes life better, that'd be caffeine and coffee, just because I love it. That makes my life better in a lot of ways. But in terms of actual training stuff, I mean, I guess it'd be creatine just because of the amount of science behind it and everything. And I like being a
And it's
strength
hard. Like,
athlete.
you can get creatine from meat, but it can be difficult
Yeah.
to get the amounts you need, you know?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
but something I also take in faith. I haven't been off of it long enough. Like it's not something because the science is so behind it. I've never gotten to the point where I'm like, I'm going to take 3 months off this to see if my lifts and my performance get worse, also knowing that there's a loading phase on the back end of it and everything. So I'm like, I just
Yeah.
continue to take it in faith, knowing that I trust that it works. But so that'd probably be it. It's hard to say for sure with something like that because it's like I haven't tested it. I don't want to test it for the low cost that it is. It's something
Yeah.
that's so easily available to take and to consume regularly. So that's probably the one. Protein's up there too, just because I think it's more the like enjoyable part of the diet that like I don't always want to be eating meat at every meal. So like a protein powder that tastes good. Like I don't think there's any magic in protein powders by any means, but not having to eat meat at every meal if you don't want to, I think is a big thing of that. They taste good and mix well in smoothies and stuff like that. But yeah, so those are probably some of the ones that stand out, but nothing that's like I don't notice any acute changes with any of those. So it's hard to say really confidently on that.
Well, as someone who takes creatine and does go on and off of creatine, you will notice a difference. I don't notice a difference as much in performance, maybe because I'm not doing like a ton of max testing to where like that's where you'd really notice the extra percentage points or whatever. Same with strength, but I just notice the size and like muscle feel, I guess is the best way. Like they feel slightly deflated when I'm off of creatine, um, which can mess with your mind a little bit, you know, if you're used to something. And then it is annoying because when you start taking it again, it's like a couple weeks for it to really kick in, and for you to feel those benefits and those effects. And so, yeah,
Yeah, I always feel like, to me, because I've gone on and off on creatine, and I know it's so great, but I always feel like it's such a commitment. Like anytime I go on it, I always feel like I need to pick the right type of training to maximize what my creatine is doing, but also like, okay, I know I have to take this every single day. I need to make sure I buy enough to last 3 or 4 months or however long I'm going to take it. Because if I run out, I don't want to miss a couple of days. And there's always times where I'll forget 1 or 2 days, or it'll be lunchtime, and I'm like, shoot, did I have it today? I can't remember if I had it today.
it's
And
okay to
it
have
can,
it again. It's pretty safe.
yeah, right. It's just it doesn't hurt. Yeah, and like doing the powder, I would. It's normally easy on training days because like, okay, I'll make my protein shake, I'll put the creatine powder in it. But if we're traveling or on the weekend, I had to remember to bring you a bucket of the powder, or like now they have gummies and chews, which is
Dude,
great. So
gummy. I
we
was
can
about to
travel
say,
with.
man, have you not seen the 40 million gummy companies that have popped up over the last 12 months? Like
Yeah,
everybody's doing it.
we tried a few. Some of them aren't that great. Some of them you need to eat like 6 of them. The chews were decent because it was like 2 chews, and I'm like, okay, I'll just chew down. I'll just
Yeah.
take down these chews. But yeah, I just always feel like it's such a commitment. Though it has been good when I've done it. I think it takes me longer to a bit deflate. I know I get a little bit bigger, and sometimes that's on the good and bad side. But yeah, I know creatine's awesome. It's just I always feel like I need to mentally prepare myself when I'm gonna be going through creatine.
Yeah. Coming off of it. Yeah, I it's funny. I don't like coming off of it, but I do that a couple times a year. Okay, so we'll round it out with me. Electrolytes have been I was thinking about this recently because um what was it? It was a couple months ago. I was like, you know what? All these electrolyte companies are ripping me off. I'm just gonna buy some salt and some lemon juice and like do this on my own. And I did for like 2 weeks, and then eventually I just like was like would get out of the habit of making it or like wouldn't do it. And I'm like, but I do feel better when I'm really well hydrated and on electrolytes and everything else. So I feel like that's the one that's like actually making life quite a bit easier, whether or not they're ripping me off with the cost of like putting salt in a bag with a little bit of flavor. Yeah, that's out there, but I think that it does help a ton and makes life a whole lot easier. And I'm agnostic to brand. We've tried a lot of different ones over the years, and I'll even switch it up. But yeah, they're electrolytes for me. It's huge.
Do you drink more water when you drink electrolytes, or is it like equated, like the same amount of water, but electrolytes make a difference?
Equated. Yes, I drink the same amount of water because I actually track or back of my head track how much water I'm drinking in a day. Because typically I have like a water bottle and I always kind of mentally, it's the same water bottle, right? So I'm like trying to shoot for whatever, 4 of these water bottles in a day, and I'll know. I think I just probably pee a little bit less when I have electrolytes first thing versus not having them. And then part of me wonders if it's like a dependency now too, because like now I'll have a day with no electrolytes. And I kind of do this intentionally when it gets colder outside. I'm like, you don't need, like, if I'm not getting in the sauna, you're doing a strength training session in a cold garage gym. Like, we don't need electrolytes today. Like, you know what I mean? And so I'll skip days, but then I'll be like, yeah, I felt kind of off yesterday. It's like, well, I don't know. Well, you didn't take electrolytes, as a daily supplement for like 20 years. And now that you do, you think that it's a thing. So part of me think there's some like placebo stuff going on there for sure. But I also think that I was with like in the summers in Texas, I think I was probably the opposite back in the day of like what I should have been. Like doing like really hard training in the garage gym, sweating my ass off, going into the sauna, standing outside at kids' soccer games for a couple hours, and then like only drinking water. It's not like it's the end of the world, but I can guarantee I could have been better hydrated if I was consuming electrolytes back then, maybe with less water or just would have felt a little bit better. Whatever, my theory at least.
It's funny. I didn't even think of electrolytes as a supplement. I take them every
Yeah,
single
like
day.
that's just life. Electrolytes are life.
It's like, it's just like water. It's in the same category now because pretty much every day, like on training days, I wake up and that's like my wake up drink to have with my coffee, especially because 6 months out of the year. So Spain here is pretty hot and the gym downstairs is, in the 70s with 70 something % humidity at the very least. So it still gets pretty muggy and I'm just always drinking. And now just this past week, it's finally cool here. And I have started to have the thought of like, all right, I'm actually not sweating that much when I'm training. Do I really need this? But I'm kind of used to this is just kind of my routine now. So I'm like, because I can actually scoop mine, I'm doing like a 3/4 scoop now instead of like a full heaping scoop.
Yeah.
But I think I just have that habit now, like you said, like it's possible slight mental side of it too. But I think I just need it first thing in the morning because I haven't drank anything in 12 hours.
Yeah. You drink electrolytes, Dave?
I do. Yeah. I'm on the fence of placebo or not. Like that's where
Right, yeah.
I think they make me drink more water too. They're like, that's the thing. There's sometimes where I'm like, I don't really want another glass of water, but like a sweet electrolyte drink sounds good. Like
Oh, well,
like
I would say I
pyramid
drink
scheme of hydration.
I drink the water bottle faster. That's for sure. Like if I have a sweet electrolyte beverage in there, like the 26-ounce water bottle that I have will be gone in 5 minutes versus if you just give me water, it'll be spread more evenly throughout the day. That's why I don't do multiple electrolyte drinks in a day because I would just like load up. But anyway, that's it for this one. Hopefully the athletes got something out of this. A lot of different science covered in one singular podcast. Let us know what you think of this podcast. See if we should be covering more or stick to one. Would love feedback from all the athletes in the community. And for all of you in the community doing the training, we really appreciate you. Thank you so much for being a part, and making the community what it is and getting in some consistent training. And if you want to be a part of that community, you can go to garagegymathlete.com, sign up for a free trial, and we'd love to have you. But that's it for this one. Remember, if you don't kill comfort, comfort will kill you.